Welcome back to the Investor Shed podcast, and my name is Nick Beveridge, and this is Jeremy Kitchen.
This is Jeremy Kitchen here with Nick Beveridge. We got a really great show for you today. Today, we're actually going to be talking about what makes a deal and what makes a deal for us, and to be most clear, like what should make a deal for you.
We're talking about real estate.
Real estate, y'all. It's gonna be
Yeah.
good stuff. But speaking of this episode, like everyone wants to know about what to make the deal, of course. But everyone really wants to know what kind of food should they be indulging in the episode.
You know what? I say you spoil yourself today because it might be a Friday.
It might be.
Why don't you get on your Domino's app and order those 2 medium-sized pizzas for $6.99 each?
Ooh, I love it. This is not sponsored by Domino's, but Domino's, if you're listening, hook us up in the future with some of them $6.99 medium pizzas.
Yeah. You know what? You know what toppings I really like lately?
What do you like?
The Italian sausage with banana peppers.
Okay.
Pretty damn good.
Okay.
We talk about bananas a lot.
We do a lot of banana food.
But this is a legit food I ate last night.
I love it. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, so enjoy your Banana Bell pepper pizza and enjoy this episode.
Bye-bye. Well, hello, everybody. My name is Nick Beveridge, and welcome to the Investor Shed podcast. You are listening maybe live on X or Facebook, or maybe you're not. Maybe you're on YouTube. Maybe you're listening to this on some sort of podcast platform. Whatever.
Whatever, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Jeremy Kitchen because Nick Beveridge failed to introduce me today. Co-host
Getting there.
You were getting there.
Interrupted me.
I didn't interrupt you. You were taking way too long. We need to get this thing going. We've got a great podcast today, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are talking about what makes a deal in real estate investing. It's going to be a good one.
Yeah. You know what? I think almost everything good in life starts with a good deal.
Almost everything in life does start with a good deal. You were absolutely correct.
Yeah, but what makes a good deal, Jeremy?
That's what we're actually going to talk about today, Nick. What do you think?
I was hoping you can just tell me.
Okay. But yeah, so what we're talking about, I'm going to do a quick introduction on this episode, obviously, of course. So, we are going to be talking about deal flow, and a lot of this, and we are going to mention this a few times in the episode, is going to be specific to the investor that's investing in the project. You're going to find a lot of times that like a good deal may not be a good deal for everybody, and it may be a great deal for somebody. So again, you just have to use your own leveraging techniques and figure out what makes sense for you.
Yeah. To give you an example, for about a decade, a great deal to me was a big old fix and flip. Mm-hmm. And I would buy it at a 70% of the after repair value minus any repairs. And if it hit that number and if it was somewhere in North Idaho, I was all over it, man. Mm-hmm. Now, this year, 2024, those deals are not ideal for me.
Yeah.
I just it takes so much time to go through that construction, mm-hmm. and even though it's it could be fun sometimes, it's great to have the before and after photos.
Yeah,
it's just I feel like I'm kind of past that stage. But what might have been a good deal for me and not anymore, it could be a great deal for you.
Yeah.
Fix and flips. I made a lot of money doing fix and flips. Mm-hmm. I still do flips, yeah. But I have a different deal criteria for me personally. But everybody's got a different idea of what makes a good deal for them. But if they haven't really done real estate deals before, they may not know that. So that's why we're going to try to break some of this down for y'all.
Yeah. And like what you said, like with your original deal, like you had a buy box, and we're going to talk about specifics of a buy box. You said it was a North Idaho 70% rule, which I would like to talk about as well.
Sure.
Because a lot of people may not know what the 70% rule is or how to calculate it. But that was your buy box, right? That was like what you wanted. You wanted something in North Idaho with equity as soon as you buy it.
Yes, that's the point. Yeah, it had to have equity the day I bought it. I didn't. You couldn't just rely on creating equity, which sometimes people do when they buy a skinny deal. Yeah, they're gonna fix it up, and then it could be potentially worth more. But if they don't buy at a discount, it could, in my eyes, not a great deal.
Right.
You're basically just maybe you're a builder at that point. You're a contractor.
Yeah.
But we are real estate investors, so we're trying to stay on that topic and try to give you the best info that we know how based off our experiences.
Yeah, and I think that's great. This would be a good transition to actually talk about, what is that 70% rule, and we'll kind of go in for that, and we'll transition to like how to figure out what your actual buy box is.
Yeah, and we're not just going to talk about fix and flips. We'll talk about buying rental properties, maybe putting together hard money loans.
Yeah,
what makes a good real estate deal for you. And there are so many different types of deals out there. Like you said, there's fix and flips, there's wholesales, there's subject to buying.
Yep.
The classic, traditional buying rentals. There's creative ways to buy rentals. There's the Burr method. Fortunately for you guys, I've done almost all these methods that we speak of. So we'll get to just go over some examples too. I think, the most recent one that we just did, Jeremy and I guess we can talk a little bit more on that since we're closing here in a couple of days, few days. That pre-server deal that we bought.
Yep.
Now that was a big old fix and flip, and I bought it, but the deal that we structured wasn't to fix and flip this home.
Right.
We bought a highly discounted property. So to give you an example, this was a property that's an hour north of us. So ideally, location is not ideal for us.
Right.
It's a huge project. That's not ideal for me.
Right.
However, it was the opportunity came to me at a price point which I would have been absolutely ridiculously stupid to say no and pass on it.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Because the better deal you get, the more options you have.
Yeah.
And so what I mean by this, like I had an opportunity to go look at this deal before it ever became a deal for me.
Yep.
About a month or so before we purchased it, I saw it come through my email, through some associates that were wholesaling this property. Said, hey, here's a property in Priest River. It's a pretty big fixer. It's a 4-bedroom house.
Yeah.
You can buy it for $160,000.
Yep.
And I did quick math in my head, and I saw, after repair values like 350.
The house
Who
needs
knows
a lot
how
of
much?
work, though.
Yeah, but at the time, you're just looking at photos. You don't know house foundation issues or anything like that. You're just like, well, if you put $100,000 into that, that actually could be a deal.
Sure.
You take. I wish there was a calculator right here, but my phone's not.
I got a calculator.
You got a calculator?
I got a calculator.
Let's do this real quick.
All right.
So, Jeremy, type in $350,000.
350,000.
Now, what $350,000 again is, that is the after repair value.
Yep.
On this house. So assuming that you fix it up to what it could sell at, redo the paint and the flooring
Without
and
over
all that
renovating
stuff,
and like making it neighborhood appropriate for what the comps would be.
what's a move-in ready house that a buyer can get, let's say a VA, FHA loan, regular conventional loan, and that they just move right in and there's nothing to really fix up. We all agreed that property should be worth at least $350,000.
Right.
Very entry level price point. Still in North Idaho, almost everything's unaffordable, but this is as good as it is going to get.
Yeah. It's true.
So you take that number and you multiply it.
Okay.
Hit the multiply button and you hit 0.7.
0.7.
What does that give you?
245.
So $245,000 is what you could pay if it needed no work.
Renovations. Yep.
Now it does need work, and it was a 2,000 square foot home. And you just kind of guess, roughly, probably about could be $100,000. And I say that because it would need all new kitchens and bathrooms and flooring and potentially electric work, HVAC work, landscaping, all the exterior work. So pretty safely, rough numbers. You don't need to get exact on this when you're first looking at a deal.
Right.
So subtract $100,000.
Yep. So you're at 145,000 right now.
So 145. So they are offering this for 160.
Yep.
Which actually, pretty close.
It's close. Like in the world of real estate investing, that's a close number. But
yeah, so that's only $15,000 off. But you know what? Maybe you're $15,000 too high. Maybe you can easily get that property done for $85,000.
That's possible.
So it's actually, if it was a few years ago, I'd go check that property out. I'd go see, could I get that renovation done easily for $85,000 or less?
Yep.
That's what would have gone through my mind a few years ago. And if I could, I would just do it. I'd spend a lot of time on it, would fix it up, probably go over budget, probably sell it for $350 or more.
Yeah.
And have a good day at the bank. So to break that down further, let's say that we actually hit those numbers. So if we sold it for $350,000, some other quick math to see how much about would I make on something like that. Take 350,000 and you multiply it by 0.93. And when you multiply it by 93%, percent that will give you a rough idea of all your closing costs with a real estate brokerage and a title company and all that.
So really, you're taking 100%, and you're anticipating 6% for buyer seller agents, and then like 1.5% for title closing costs type things like that, right?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yep. And then you subtract another 160,000 for what you bought it for, and let's say you were on budget and you spent $85,000 on the reno. Now you may be thinking to yourself, "Holy crap, I can make $80,500 on this." Not so fast.
Nope.
Now, did you get a loan on it?
Yeah, hard money loan. What are those costs?
Did you pay any insurance, taxes, holding costs? What about fees when you go to buy these properties? Now, when you go to buy a property like this, sometimes you'll spend $2,000 in closing costs just to purchase it from the title company, because a lot of wholesalers, they push off a lot of the seller cost onto the buyer.
Yeah, they want to keep their costs as minimal as possible.
So let's take off another let's say $2,000 for that, and then if you're getting a hard money loan on this, if you spent, let's say you brought some money to the table and you got a loan, let's see, what 160,000 is plus the $2,000 to close on it, and then the $85,000 renovation. Oh, I hit the wrong button somewhere. Hold on, $85,000 renovation. Oh, keep hitting the subtract button.
First time using an iPhone, you have one of these.
Plus a couple thousand to close on it. So you've got about $247,000 that you're going to kind of need to get into this project.
Yeah.
Now let's say you get a hard money loan for $200,000 of that, and you're coming out of pocket, about $50,000. So take $200,000 and then multiply that by 0.1, which is 10%. So that's $20,000. So
yeah, if you did this, if it took you a year, basically your holding cost would be $1,667 per month, basically.
Yeah, and most fix and flips, they're going to take 4 to 8 months, somewhere in there. So let's just call it 6.
Yeah, times it by 6.
So you basically take that by 6. It's going to be $10,000.
Yep.
So if this project took 6 months, expect to spend $10,000 in interest. Now, when you get a hard money loan on a big old fix and flip like this, you're also spending points. So if you get a $200,000 loan, typically you're going to spend about anywhere from 2 to 4 points. So let's just call it 3.
Yep, 3.
So 3% would be so 200,000. Yeah, it's going to be 6, but times 0.03. So on the loan amount, up front, another $6,000 in fees. Okay.
So you got 16,000.
So let's call it 16,000. And then let's not forget, if you're getting insurance,
which you have to. Your hard money lender is going to force you to get an insurance policy on the house, 100%.
Yeah, and a fix and flip policy too. Don't lie and say it's a rental, because if something happens, you probably won't be covered. And you can expect to spend at least $1,000 for 6 months on a fix and flip.
Oh yeah.
So let's just call it another, $1,000.
Have you ever bought a house while you're doing this numbers? Have you ever bought a house and just hope that it burns down while you're working on it, so you can just get paid out insurance?
Oh, every
time. Yeah,
every time. Yeah, you're just like, I got a good policy on this.
I hope an earthquake just shatters this thing, right?
You're just hoping that your handyman will miswire something.
Yeah. Whoopsie daisy. We don't hope that.
No, I'm just kidding. Okay. So spend that, and then let's say there's $2,500 in taxes per year, and it's going to take 6 months. You divide that by 2. There's another $1,250. So the 6,000 plus the 10,000 plus, let's see, what else did we have there? Oh yeah, that. Okay, so let's figure another $20,000.
Yeah, $20,000.
So roughly. And there could be other utilities is something that we're also forgetting about, but let's just say you got all that done within your renovation budget. Like, let's say that, you calculated that you're going to pay a Vista or whatever, the utility company, a couple $100 a month, and you're just going to use that. You can keep that within your budget. So, if I took on that project and if everything collided just fine, I can make $60,000.
Yeah, 80 minus your cost of holding, right? So $60,000 for 6 months of work. It's not bad.
Yeah, not horrible. Not horrible for not having a boss. You know, and this is ideal for people that just don't want a boss and want to work on their own schedule.
Yeah,
you
and
can
this
go
is
fix and flip, but
this is obviously anticipating with these numbers that you're going to be doing the renovation yourself.
not necessarily. I mean, a lot of this is assuming like but we were just guessing 85,000.
Sure. Right.
You know, you can hire that out, or you can do most of the work. Typically, good rule of thumb here, if you're trying to calculate like construction cost, whatever the materials is, just double the materials, and that's typically what your labor is.
Okay,
you know,
cool.
So if you have you know, a drywall, you know, $3,000 worth of drywall materials, figure another $3,000 of labor.
Sure.
If you have a roof that has, you know, $5,000 of materials, figure another $5,000 of labor.
Yeah.
So whatever your material is going to cost, just double it, just to get a rough idea how much your labor is going to be, and then decide yourself, if you do that work, is it worth it?
Right.
You know, to
That's
save
an important piece, right?
Is it worth your time to go do this work? Most of the time, it's not.
You're right. You were absolutely right.
Most of the time, you will save more money by just hiring the right people that don't gouge you.
Yep.
And trying to get all this stuff done at the same time. And the reason why I say that is because there are contractors that specialize in certain things. If you hire a drywall guy, they're going to probably be 2 to 3 times faster than a handyman at drywall.
Yep.
If you hire an electrician, even though they charge $100 an hour, they're probably going to be 3 to 4 times faster than a handyman or yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you hire a plumber, the right plumber, chances are they're going to get, you know, because if you're doing plumbing work, or if a handyman's doing plumbing work in the house, no matter how good they are, they're going to Home Depot or Lowe's probably 20 times that day to get the right fittings. When a plumber has all that stuff in their van, or
That's true.
And they can get that job done twice as fast as a handyman easily, even though they charge twice as much sometimes.
Right.
If you can coordinate the right people, you know, all at the same time where they're not, you know, climbing over themselves, you can get a job done much faster than if you take one step at a time.
Absolutely.
Or try to do everything yourself. That's why when you hear about nightmare fix and flips, they try to do everything themselves. There's so many pieces to this puzzle of a house.
Yeah.
Thousands and thousands of pieces, and people dramatically underestimate how much labor is involved fixing up a house.
You don't know until you do it. That is for sure.
But I mean, just rule of thumb, get 10 contractors.
Yeah.
Not bids. I mean, rule of thumb, just get 10 people, like get an electrician, get a gutter guy, get a siding and framing people, get your, you know, like I already said, plumber, cabinet guy, countertop people. Get all those people that specialize in those particular items on those homes, and just try to coordinate it well to get a job done in a few weeks versus months. Because remember, every month costs you $1,600 in interest on this example.
Yeah.
How much is that worth your time if it takes an extra 6 months?
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
That's an extra 10 grand. How much, if you lost 10 grand, how much, you know, if you were just to use that money to hire all the right people and get it done faster, you make it up.
Yeah.
You know, with fix and flips, it's all about speed.
Right. You want to get it done as fast as possible. And that absolutely makes sense. And I love what you said there, Nick, about, you know, like hiring the right people to do the right job. Not only are these people hopefully going to be, you know, licensed, bonded, insured and everything like that, but, you know, say if I went in and did my own plumbing, I don't know shit about plumbing, right? So what's going to happen is I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it wrong. And it's going to take me a long time to figure out how to do it wrong. Like I'm going to dick around with it for days, you know, a month, trying to get it right, when a plumber, like you said, can just come in and do the thing.
Yeah. And while your words, dicking around with with a plumbing job, and let's say it just took you a full 6-8 hours, how many phone calls could you have gotten done in that time frame to call all the people to go work on your house at the same time?
Right. And not only that, like, I mean, like, I'm not qualified to be a plumber. I have no reason doing any sort of plumbing work. And that's something, you know, your skills may vary depending on whoever is, you know, doing a fix and flip, if that's the option you choose. But professionals, like you think with fix and flips, typically like the beginner thinking is like, I want to save as much money as possible, and I
Yep.
get it, right? You want to do it all yourself because you want to learn that experience, but really you should just be hiring out the key pieces that you need to help move the project
Yeah.
along.
And what I've noticed with experienced real estate investors or flippers in general, the longer they're in this game and the more experienced they are, they know saving money. If you really want to save money, you don't do it all on your own.
Right.
You find the right people, and it's all about finding the right people and making a shit ton of phone calls and connections and getting referrals, because it is hard to find the perfect electrician who's not going to gouge you. It's hard to find, and that's available within a certain reasonable amount of time, and the list goes on. There's a lot of different types of contractors out there, and if you're new at it, go ahead and get your feet wet. Just dive in. That's the best way to learn. But
Or shadow people who are doing it.
shadow people.
Yeah.
Be very open-minded. Learn the steps, because it's very it's simple but complicated at the same time.
Yeah.
There's a lot of components to a house, and it does have to be done in a certain order,
Yeah.
so that you're not redoing work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's something I've only done a few fix and flips with you, and that's been a majority of my experience flipping. But you definitely got to go in order. You gotta
Somewhat.
somewhat for the most part. But
Yeah.
you can't paint the exterior if you're getting new paint. If you're getting new vinyl.
Oh yeah, before you put the new siding on.
Yeah. Why?
Good
Doesn't
simple example. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, we're going on and on about this potential deal.
Yeah.
Now here's what happened. I saw that potential deal. I ran the numbers in my head because I've done it 1,000 times. And I'm not exaggerating. I'm not bloating here. I looked at it, and I probably spent 20 seconds of effort analyzing all this in my head.
Yeah.
Just because I've done it so many times. You can scroll through photos and just know about what things are going to cost, about how long it's going to take.
Yeah. That comes from experience.
Yep. And still, until you don't know until you walk through it or see an inspection,
Right.
how much work is actually needed. But at least you know enough to see if it's something that you want to even, look at further.
Sure.
And so I looked at it. I'm like, nah, no thanks.
Yeah. At that number, it was a no.
Yeah. But it would have been a few years ago, I would go check that out.
Sure.
But the reason for me, and the deal criteria I gave myself this year was no big construction projects.
Yeah.
Pretty simple.
Yeah.
Now, this deal, this wholesaler, they called me about a month later, and they said, "Hey, do you want to buy a house in Priest River, tonight?" I'm
right now?
I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, that 4-bedroom home," and and they're like, "Yeah," and I'm like, "Yeah, it's a lot of work for me. I
Yeah.
appreciate it though." And they're like, wait. They're like, "What if we can get it for $79,000? Would you be interested then?" I'm like, "Whoa, really?
Okay.
Tell me more. What's going on?" And they're like, they just want that. They're willing to pretty much take anything at this point. And they meaning the sellers.
Yeah.
They just want to move next week. And we can't do any more showings.
Yeah.
We need someone to commit.
We need a now or never.
We need somebody to commit tonight. Just tell us what would you be willing to buy it for?
Yeah.
And I thought about it, and I'm like, well, I don't really want a project. I'd have to get it. If they're at that point, let me see what's the worst case scenario. What if it is a teardown? Because all of a sudden I started hearing that the foundation's really bad.
Yeah.
I kept hearing the foundation is really bad.
It's a weird sinking house.
So
for sure.
immediately in my mind, I went to, okay, what's the worst case scenario? It's a teardown. So what's a teardown worth? Well, let's figure out what the land value is.
And then subtract the cost of demolition.
So I told him I'll call him back. What I did was I took a couple hours to research that particular property and what should that land be worth.
Yeah.
And I figured, it took me a little bit, but I figured it's conservatively, it could sell, 110 to 130 is about what that land should be worth. And then you got to remove the building too, which can cost another $20,000 to remove a house from the property if needed.
So our number would have been 110 to 90, right?
So I basically just said, I need, if you sell it to me for $60,000, $60,000, that's about half of the land value, I'd be safe at that number, because at worst case scenario, we have to tear down the house. I spend the money to tear down the house, and then let's say I have to sell the lot for $99,000 just to get rid of it.
Right.
Then yeah, I'll be safe.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lose money.
You're safe.
I'll still
Yeah,
make,
100% on that.
yeah, I'll still make 10 grand if I had to even go that far.
Right.
But should be totally safe. Like it's at a point where maybe I'll just keep the land at that point.
No, you're right.
So that's why I said, I'm like, I'll do it for 60. And they called me back later that night, like late in the night, like 9 or something, 9 o'clock. That's late for me. I'm in bed by 9:30.
Yeah, yeah. He's an early bird.
Yeah, and they said, hey, we got him down to 55 on our end. We really want to make at least 10 on this. Are you good? Are you good with 65? And I'm like, yes. I'm like,
Sure.
Yes, I can.
I guess so. Yeah.
Now, I didn't have a full 65,000 in my bank account, but I knew I had a credit line of 50,000 that was open.
Yep.
I could just pull from it any time, and that was enough. If I needed to get a hard money loan and put half down,
Sure.
I can easily do that. So in my head, I immediately knew, yes, I can do this.
Yeah.
I can at least close in a couple of days.
Yep.
Don't even need to see it. Because I had to buy it in that contingency. Like, look, you can't come and see it. Just get opinions from people that already saw it.
Just buy the thing, please. Yeah.
Just buy it. So yeah, and I got to look at the title commitment to make sure that it wasn't, there's nothing else funky going on there, weird easements or train, driving through the house, anything weird like that.
Yeah.
So that's something else you got to check too. If you're all getting just an insane killer deal, check the title report and just see if there's anything on there that, there's a reason why someone's basically giving a property away.
Right.
But this was truly just, foundation's bad. They want to move.
Yeah.
They just want some cash. They inherited the house. They just want to move on.
Yeah. And with that, like you said, they were getting to a point where they were desperate and they wanted to move. When desperation comes from sellers, typically there's a lot more opportunity.
Yep.
But yeah, so you didn't have all the money on the deal.
No.
And that's okay, but you had enough to know that you could make the deal happen.
Yeah. So I had two options. I can go to a hard money lender real quick and just say, hey, I've got half down on this house that's like a third of the value.
Right.
It would have been a no-brainer for any hard money lender I contacted. I knew they would just do it.
Right.
But before I did that, I wanted to talk to Jeremy.
Yeah,
because
I
I knew,
that.
Know your surroundings, everybody. If you got a friend that has a lot of cash and you got a no-brainer deal, maybe involve them instead of a hard money lender if they've been asking for one. Maybe it's better if Jeremy can make some money instead of my hard money guy because they're rich enough.
No, I appreciate the call, but really for me, like this one was a no-brainer for you, and it was a no-brainer for me as well because this fit my box really well.
Yeah,
like the things that's in my buy box right now is private money lending and funding on good deals. Like that's what I want to do right now.
Yeah. Now you might be thinking to yourself, now wait a second, Nick. You said that a deal in 2024 isn't a deal if it's a heavy fixer. Yeah. So that's why I bought it at the price I did because the plan was never to fix it up.
What I loved is the exit strategy. Like that. Yeah. That's what I was like really intrigued about in this deal.
Yeah. Now I have this license to print money called a real estate license, real estate agent license. And it gives me the ability to throw it on the MLS for billions of people to see. Yep. Unlike a wholesaler where they have to create a buyer's list.
Yep.
A wholesaler is an unlicensed person most of the time. Sometimes they're licensed.
Yeah.
But if I close on a property, I can throw it on the MLS and everyone can see it then. All the investors in the world. And so our plan was, you know what? Let's do this. We know they're going to leave a bunch of trash behind.
Yep.
We know the house is probably stinky.
Yep.
Let's solve those two issues, and that's it. And we'll leave it open, an open canvas for an investor to go check it out.
Yeah.
Try to get some sort of frenzy going. So we agreed. Let's not spend more than $5,000. We spent $6,000.
Yeah,
but
that's pretty damn close. But yeah.
Yeah, we spent $6,000, and we hired my brother Sean,
it's worth every penny,
and his guys. They did a total trash out of this property, which, included, I think he said, somewhere between 15 to 20 dump runs.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of work, but easy work, like
Yeah.
no brainer work. Like any idiot can just go and throw trash in a dumpster and haul it to the dump and push a button and then repeat the process.
It was a time-consuming project, from my understanding, but they got it done.
They got it done in a week.
Yeah.
So we hired them to do that. Plus, with that $6,000, we also wanted half of that money to be devoted towards priming the interior. Now, this gets rid of the stinky smell.
Yep.
And it just makes it look kind of fresh.
Yeah.
So we wanted a white primer sprayed all over the interior. And I said, Sean, go ahead and make a mess.
Yeah,
Like, you don't need to tape off much. Just spray primer all over the walls, ceilings, and floors.
Yep.
We just don't want, if there's any weird smell, and I don't even know if it smelled. I just assumed it did because it was full of trash.
I'm assuming it did too. They said it was very stinky when they got there.
But when I went there to change out the doorknobs, didn't smell bad at all.
It smelled like primer. Yeah.
It smelled like primer. And what the cool thing about primer is that it locks in smells.
Yeah.
It seals, so that you can paint on top of the primer.
Yep.
But the primer's job is to lock in whatever's there and not necessarily hide it, but it's gone.
Yeah.
Like it's covered in primer.
Yeah.
Like you'd have to scrape it up to like try to find mold or smells or whatever it's covering, but it's an effective way of getting rid of a problem legitimately.
Right.
They got all that done within a week.
Yep.
We put it on the market for $129,000.
That's right.
And we still never got it inspected. We don't know what the extent of the foundation issues were. We just know that when you walk into the kitchen, you can almost fall over because it's like
you could bring a snowboard in there and you could start going downhill.
yeah. And there's a room up like there's this one whole side of the house that is pretty bad.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's something going on in the foundation where it needs to be jacked up and redone.
Yeah.
To what extent? I don't know. We didn't have time to really care. All we knew is that we were putting that out there at a price point that was going to be extremely attractive for other people.
Yep.
And if we were way under what it should have sold for, that it would probably get bid up.
Yeah.
So we put it on the market for $129,000. The ARV is still the same.
Yeah.
The ARV is still $350. So it gives somebody plenty of margin. Like, hey, if you can get this house done for $150,000,
Yeah.
or 130, whatever, like is $130,000 enough for somebody to still make a huge margin? And it's on the MLS.
Yeah.
Like you don't typically see MLS deals this cheap. These deals usually get snagged up.
Especially on real land.
Yeah. So, we listed this in August of 2020 and it actually
2024.
did. Yep. August of 2024. Sorry.
You're okay. Like, no, we didn't do this 4 years ago. This is an active deal. So.
This was a month ago. So, we put it on the market and it got very little activity.
Yeah.
Which was surprising for the first few days. Then the next week, shit ton of activity.
Yep.
And then people are fighting over it at the last minute.
Yep.
Hey, quick commercial break here. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I really do appreciate it. If you want to give back, let me help you buy a house, or I can help you sell a house. It's the only way I make money when I'm not investing in real estate. I don't make money on this podcast or the events I do, but I do make money only when I help people buy and sell houses. So if you're looking for your next investment and you're here in North Idaho, I want to help you personally. If you are not in North Idaho, I can still help you out. I have a vast network of referral partners all across the country, and I can find the right real estate investor savvy agent for you so you don't have to. It doesn't cost you a thing. Thank you for your support. Back to the show. Ended up selling it for $119,000.
Yep.
Actually, we will close on it in a few days. We're past the inspection time frame.
Cool.
Actually selling it to a builder that I know.
Yeah.
And he knows what's going on with the foundation. He said he can fix it. He said he can do the entire renovation for $75,000
Great.
because he's going to do it.
Right.
And good for him.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's going to make a lot of money on this house. And I love seeing that. I love feeling like people aren't getting screwed over,
Right.
and we can still make a decent margin in between.
We got a good deal, and
Yeah.
we're giving a good deal. Like
Yeah.
that feels good.
We spent $66,000 if you include our renovation costs, and we're selling it for $119,000.
Yep.
You do the math.
We
on
held
how
it
much
for
we're making.
about a month and a half.
Yeah, holding it for about a month and a half, and then it doesn't end there either. I got this builder a hard money loan. brokering it to him.
Yeah.
Making a little fee, brokering a hard money loan to him. Also, real estate agent tips out there, it doesn't have to stop there either.
Yeah.
I had him sign a pre-listing agreement with me. He's going to list that fix and flip with me when it's done. We're already under contract for that.
Yeah.
But I agreed, we agreed on a 5% commission, 2.5.
Boom.
So I'll make another commission when it's done.
Yeah.
I will be his listing agent. I'm going to do the work to, to market it correctly and all
Jeremy's
that
going to do
stuff.
photos again.
I'm going to be representing him. Nobody's getting screwed.
Yeah.
And now, so I made money on the flip, on the hard money loan, and also
in the future.
with the future listing commission.
Yeah.
Now that's a deal for me.
Right.
Not everybody can do that.
Right.
If you're a real estate agent out there, you can do things like this.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're an investor out there, you can still do most of that. Maybe you can't list a property when it's all done.
Right.
But hopefully I'm getting through to what that deal, did. It wasn't a deal for me, and then it was.
Yeah. And then, I think what's cool about this deal, and we'll get back into, analyzing and finding deals here in a minute, but what was cool about this deal in particular, Nick and I both used credit lines to purchase this house.
Yeah.
So, my out-of-pocket expense, I used $47,500 out of my HELOC, and I had that for about a month.
Yep.
I think my holding cost on that was somewhere between $300 to $400.
Yeah.
And if I make $16,000, I'm getting a 1,900% rate of return on that thing.
Yeah, and I think my numbers are super similar.
Yeah.
Because I used a credit line as well, a business line of credit. I know we both have different interest rates and stuff, but
Right.
I think my interest payment on it was around $300
Yeah.
for the month.
Not too shabby.
So that was my out of pocket.
Yep.
And my time and my knowledge.
Right.
You still, it's not just about the money. You got to know what you're doing.
Right.
So that was a deal that wasn't a deal and then made it become one because the price changed.
Yeah. Well, the price change was definitely when you contacted me about that deal, Nick, it was an automatic yes because you're dude, we're buying this thing at literal less than land assessed value.
Yeah.
And in my head, I'm great. There's no downside there. We could rip down the house and still make money.
Yeah.
And again, the exit strategies were really nice. We just wanted to do a quick spray down with primer and put it on the market.
Yep.
This wasn't something where we had to spend hours and hours and hours of our own time.
No, and that's the biggest thing I love about this. The amount of time I spent physically on that project was I went there to change out the doorknobs.
Yeah.
Just
I
to
took
make sure.
photos. That's all I did.
Yeah, changed out the doorknobs. I put a lockbox on it. That was it. I never even went to show it.
Yeah.
I told my client because it's my house, my listing.
Yeah.
I had buyers call me. I just gave them the lockbox code.
Right.
No, I'm not going to go walk you through the house. What help am I going to be?
Yeah.
I never walked it in the first place, really. Go at your convenience.
Yeah.
Here it is. Now, I can't do that with other sellers' listings, but if you have your own listings that are your own properties, there's no rules against it. Brokers out there, correct me if I'm wrong, but the liability was all on me, and I was willing to take the risk.
Yeah. And we have an insurance policy and everything anyway, but so yeah, that's this specific deal, and this was a deal flow that made sense for both of us. Nick didn't want a big, heavy renovation. I honestly didn't either. We didn't want to work an hour away, and we didn't want to put in all of our time building this thing. Why not just put it on the market and see what happens? And it ended up working really well.
Yeah. So far, what makes a deal, what we went over, fix and flip. It's all about how much can you get it for.
Yeah.
But it's also, there's, you got to take into consideration, is it the right location for you?
Location's very big.
Yeah.
That's one I wanted to hit on today too. So
yeah. Give you an example. I did get into a kind of a heavier fix and flip. So I have these goals, throughout the year, and sometimes I don't always hit them. I did take on a normal fix and flip this year, but it was in a good location.
yeah.
And it wasn't the reason why I kind of categorized it as this isn't a heavy fixer, even though we're pouring 50 to 60 grand into it.
Yeah.
Is because it was built in the 1990s, and
It's pretty new.
And got a good look in the crawl in the attic. We know it's all fine. We can see the foundation. Everything's fine. This house is built in the late 90s.
Yeah.
It just needed a serious cosmetic renovation.
Yep.
And it was in a good location, and we got it at that 70% deal.
Yeah.
An investor brought it to me. She didn't have, enough money, time, or experience to do it all on her own, but she definitely wanted to learn. And so we did a partnership. That made sense for us. It wasn't exactly a 50-50, but she brought a little bit of money to the table.
Yeah.
I brought the rest, mostly in a credit line, and we got it seller financed.
Yeah.
That was part of like what made it a good deal. We got a house in Coeur d'Alene with an after repair value. Can you break out your calculator?
Sure can.
This one had an after repair value of $400,000. Take that, multiply by 0.7.
280.
280. Okay. Now this one, it needed about $50,000 in renovation. So we could comfortably spend $230 on it. She got it for $260.
Okay.
But we got the price down to $250. Good enough for us.
Okay. So you were close. You're within 20,000.
Yeah. So we didn't exactly. It was a little over that 70% deal, but we knew that the location.
Yeah, it's a really good location.
The location and the renovation will probably drive up that 400,000 a little bit. I feel like I was actually being a little conservative,
which
at
you should be when you're
400,000,
running your numbers.
because there are other comps that like could put it like close to. This is going to sound weird, but like close to 500 grand.
Yeah, Coeur d'Alene's kind of weird right now.
Yeah, so it wasn't.
This is a Coeur d'Alene house, right?
This is a Coeur d'Alene
Okay,
house,
yeah.
right by the hospital. But there were some in that neighborhood that like would have put the ARV like at 500,000. So it was, but like a more common theme was closer to 400.
Yeah.
So all I knew was like 400 is definitely achievable.
Yeah.
And what made this a good backup plan, if like we weren't going to make enough money on it, and if the economy continued or collapsed harder, this could be a great short-term rental, because you walk out the front door and there's a hospital sign right there.
Yeah.
That, the H symbol with the arrow, and you look and it's right there.
Okay.
And this could be an amazing little house that we're gonna make great condition for traveling nurses.
Yeah.
Or
Like a midterm rental or
Midterm
something like
rental. So we were just thinking, man, this could be a great backup plan.
Yeah.
Because we knew that the seller really didn't mind extending, long-term financing if needed. They had a lot of, they were experienced investors.
Yeah.
And they had a lot of properties, and they wanted to start converting them to seller financing.
Nice.
So they're actually very comfortable. Like, hey, if it doesn't work out as a fix and flip, we'll just refinance it and do a midterm rental out of it. So we talked about that, which is great. It was great talking with the seller where they're like an experienced investor themselves too, and you can just talk about your options.
Yeah.
They got a great deal at an auction, and then just didn't have time for it.
Sure.
So anyway, yeah. So that made sense for us.
Yeah.
I kind of like the idea of helping somebody. But this time, I've done this so many times in the past where I would help out a brand new investor, make them a partner. They brought me a deal and it's like 50-50 and they don't have to bring any money. And like, fuck that. I'm done with that forever. Yeah. Like it doesn't work.
As you should be.
Yeah. So in this scenario, she was a smaller equity partner, but still, I can't remember, 30-40% somewhere.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there.
There's nothing wrong
maybe
with 40%
35.
of a deal.
And she actually, she cashed out some of her retirement plan to actually bring some money to the table. As like, this is money I have at risk.
This is
good. You have some skin in the game. I really appreciated that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, good. Let's, so she's going to make a very good return. And also some of her terms were like, you don't have to do anything. I wanted to make that very clear. Like, you brought me the deal, you're bringing some money. The more you want to be involved, the better.
Great.
But I just want to be very clear with, like, in our joint venture agreement, you are not required to do anything.
Yeah.
At this point, because I've had some miscommunications in the past.
Sure.
With, or expectations, and that wanted to be very clear on that.
Yeah.
But she's been very helpful.
That's awesome. Very cool.
Yeah.
And again, that's the deal. Like what we're talking about is we're building an overarching theme of what your actual buy box should be. And it's going to depend on a lot of things. So your buy box is going to be unique to you.
Yep.
What location do you want? What price point do you want? What kind of renovation do you want to do? Do you even want to do renovation? Do you just want to buy something turnkey? Like, you have to figure these things out before you start investing.
Yeah. Now let's talk about the RV park.
Okay.
What made this a potential deal for me?
Yeah.
So I got involved about 3 years ago in an RV park in Osborne. It's a 23 space. I think it was in pretty rough shape. It didn't have a bathhouse.
Sure.
And no sewer hookups.
Yep.
So the type of people that you had staying there were not great. And it had a property manager that was remote.
Okay.
So this property was just a mess, and my brother had owned it for about a year or two, a couple of years, I think. And he brought it to me. He's like, dude, I can kind of use your coordination skills. He was a busy contractor and was trying to kind of relying on his property manager to work, this out. But the property manager was more specialized in long-term rentals remotely.
Yeah.
This RV park needed a lot of help. So it was a $265,000 was his payoff. I gathered some private investors to come in and pay off that loan before it went bad. So we owned it free and clear, but I had this note on it that with a private investor that they were going to get a certain dollar amount after it's fixed up and refinanced. Cool. A pretty big return on their end. I think it was like $50,000 fee.
Cool.
So we knew we were in this park immediately day one of, $265 plus that $50,000 fee.
$315.
What's that? $315. So we knew we're all in already before we do anything to this park.
Yep.
At $315. And we ended up spending over the course. Now this took a lot of effort.
Yeah. This is a multi-year thing. This has been going a while.
Yep. So it took me a couple of years to get a bathhouse built with 4 bathrooms and a laundry center with coin operated laundry, and then to clear out the park, redo the asphalt, fix a lot of hydrants that were broken, fix a lot of electrical issues, dumped another 210 grand or so over the 2 years of my cash into it.
15 plus, so you're at like 535,000 right now.
Yeah, about in the low 500s is how much we're into it. So pretty much all cash. I did end up getting like another lien against it with a $160,000 loan with $1,300 interest payments. But last year, finally, I said, thank you, but we don't need you anymore to the property manager.
Yep.
I'm like, I need somebody on site.
Yeah.
There's this guy that was living not too far away that was selling his manufactured home in a park, cashing out like $100 grand or so. And him and his wife were in their 70s and they wanted to retire. And he actually called me because I was trying to sell this RV park because it just wasn't working. We finished it like 6 months prior to this guy calling me, and we could not get a renter to stay in this park because homeless people kept like breaking into the bathrooms. Yeah. And it was just a mess. So I finally took over. I'm like, gimme. I got the website. I got the phone numbers to come. I got the phone number to come to my cell phone on Google if people were calling this RV park. I got in touch. I got researched on ChatGPT. What are the best RV park management softwares out there? Yeah. I found ResNexus was this software company that was worked really well. It's kind of, they do like hotels and campgrounds and stuff and to help manage. I got a map built with all the different sites, and I used a guy on Fiverr to help me build out this map of the park. Yeah. And so in combination with all that, I got I got an agreement with ChatGPT with this manager because I didn't know how much to pay him or anything. I just wanted to do something that was fair, but also incentivize occupancy. Yep.
Which is good.
Yep. So I made a deal with him. Hey, you stay here for free. You don't get paid anything until we have a 40% occupancy. Yeah. Once we're over, once we have 400% or 400, 40% to
Yeah.
60% occupancy, if we're in that range, I'm going to give you an extra $500 a month.
Yeah.
If we're at 60 to 60% to 80% or 79%,
Yeah.
something like that, then I'm going to give you $800 a month on top of you staying for free.
Nice.
If we're over 80% occupied, you're going to get to stay there for free and get an extra $1,000 a month.
That's awesome.
And they really liked that. And I had ChatGPT write up a small management agreement, and what they were responsible for was keeping tenants in line, collecting rent if we weren't doing it online, and keeping the bathrooms clean. This was a huge one.
Yeah.
His wife is cleaning them every day.
Yeah, I bet.
But they're happy to have a job to do.
Yeah.
And during the winter, he's got a side-by-side with a plow. He keeps the park plowed.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I can see on the cameras that they're always like kind of keeping this park maintained really well.
Yeah.
So I don't have to hire an employee. I just have an agreement with this guy that's mostly based off occupancy.
Yeah.
And so it's been going for almost a year now. And we are, I think, at a 90% occupied right now. We just had a turnover.
Nice. That's pretty good.
And this park is bringing in about somewhere between $8,000 and $9,000 a month.
Cool.
Now, is that finally a deal?
You're getting there. Yeah, yeah. I mean, your
Yeah.
cash on cash return for the first 5 years has been awful to say
Yeah.
the least. But like now that it's
Now
up and running,
it's been an active investment, but just yesterday, I finally am at a point where we stopped taking short-term rentals, and now it's all long-term.
yep.
And I finally put the phone number in, so I don't get the calls anymore. It's all going to Bill and Linda.
Nice.
So it's finally became a passive investment as of yesterday.
Nice. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And we can anticipate an average of $8,500 a month coming in.
Yeah.
So what, Jeremy, if you don't mind, can you type in, let's see, 8,500 times 12. So that's the monthly income.
So 102,000 a year.
About 102,000 a year.
Yep.
Divide that number by 515-ish.
198.
Oh, sorry, 515,000.
102 divided by 515. 19%.
Yeah. So almost a 20% return.
Yeah, 20% annualized return every year. That's so 5 years. That's a good investment. That's a good business to buy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, in 5 years,
So
this
currently-
business should hypothetically pay for itself.
Now that's gross.
Of course, yeah.
Now, what expenses are there? The water bill is $116 a month.
Okay.
The tax bill is less than $2,000 a year.
Okay.
My insurance is approximately 110 or so a month, and that interest payment that's still there is 100. Now that interest payment actually isn't part of the returns.
Yeah.
Like because that's debt service. In debt service, you don't typically calculate like your cap rates or anything.
Right.
With debt service, because if someone came in and paid cash, how much can they expect to be a return on their cash?
Right.
Is what you want to look at. And then the utility bills for sewer, there are none.
Okay.
There's just a septic system with that bathhouse and no sewer hookups.
Nice.
There's a dump station that nobody uses, so everybody's just using the bathrooms. At least they're brand new, nice bathrooms.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. As far as repairs and maintenance, super low.
Yeah. It's
Everybody's
just
got
like one
their-
building is all it is, and
Everybody's got their own RVs.
yeah.
That's what they maintain. I think we've probably spent $300 or so fixing a frost freeze spigot, but our overall the repairs and maintenance on an RV park, not much.
No.
Especially when a lot of it's actually included for free with our management agreement.
Yeah, that's
that
true.
Bill does a lot of the small repairs and stuff by himself.
Yeah. So I mean, like obviously your gross is, I forgot what it was, but you're subtracting $700 a month for expenses hypothetically.
Yeah, a little bit more than that.
A little bit more.
Because there's also the power bill. The power bill is
Sure.
roughly $1,000 a month.
Okay.
And that varies depending on the time of year.
$1,000 a month for power.
Yeah, so far.
Oh yeah. I mean,
Not
everyone. I
bad.
guess
Divide that by
everybody's
20.
going to be drawing in.
That's everybody's spending about $50 a month.
Yeah, that's not
worth
bad.
of power. Not too bad. Now that can change, but still, I mean, for me, this works.
Right.
Like that's a good return.
Yeah.
Took a while to get there. Now the return on my cash is different.
Yeah.
Because my actual cash was $200,000.
Yeah.
Now I've still got to pay off these loans.
Yep.
So I'm working on that.
Cool.
But finally, it took a long time for this deal to become a deal.
Yeah.
I almost just tried to sell it and let somebody else deal with it.
You did.
But I finally grabbed the bull by the balls at the beginning of the year and had to take extreme operating control.
Yeah.
Which was a job.
Yeah, you did.
And I took a lot of phone calls from short-term renters. Here's what I found. The short-term rental with RV parks sucked.
Yeah.
Income-wise compared to the others.
Sure.
So many of those people just cancel. They block your calendar for a while, and then we saw at least like a 70% cancel rate.
Wow.
Which was insane.
Yeah.
But whatever.
People just passing through or whatever, and obviously if their trip changes, maybe they're like not going to Kellogg because Kellogg sucks, and they're like, well,
I don't know. Yeah, or maybe they see it, it's starting to become a long-term park. Maybe they looked at some of the reviews. Some of the reviews are good, some weren't so good, but doesn't matter. It's a parking lot.
right.
It's a parking lot that we are providing, a very low housing cost for people that are otherwise probably going to be homeless.
Sure.
And I feel pretty good about that.
Yeah.
I feel good about not having to raise rents at all this year.
Do you feel like
$450 to $475 is what we're charging.
It's not bad at all. Do you feel like it'd be beneficial for you to maybe make like a little convenience store?
No.
Okay.
Don't want the operating. I like my passive investments.
Sure.
I'm going to have my hands full with this new project that we're starting in Hayden.
Sure.
So I need as little distractions as possible.
That makes sense.
Now, if I had nothing else going on, probably.
Yeah.
There's 5 acres on that property. And we're only taking up 2 acres.
Yeah.
So there's room to add more stuff.
Sure.
But don't have the time for it. So deal for you, maybe. Deal for me, no.
Right.
That's the point of today's episode.
Cool. Yeah. And like we said, like everyone's deal criteria is going to be different depending on what you want, of course. It's important to just get that buy box and figure out what you want to do and then just take action and make it happen.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
All right. Some things to consider: market conditions and timing. Man, this is tough. When you're trying to calculate in your deals market conditions, you're looking in the rearview mirror.
Right. You can only see the data that's already out.
Yeah. Nobody can predict the future, but you can look at patterns and just know that, when it comes to market conditions, when you're valuing a property, you're looking at what's happened. So if you're doing long-term investments, you're almost always good.
Yeah.
If you're planning on keeping a property for 30 years, there's really never been a time in history where somebody bought something 30 years ago and it was worth less.
That's pretty true.
30 years later. And that has a lot to do with the purchasing power of the U.S. dollar, inflation, not just, appreciation is basically inflation.
Right.
But no, for the most part. So anyway, keep that in mind when it comes to market conditions. You're looking at what happened in the past. So if you're flipping a house, you got to also look at actives and pendings.
Yep.
As something to consider, and not just what already sold. Especially in a market where there's a lot of uncertainty, because even though we're in September of 2024, and rates have been coming down.
Yeah.
I think in general, people are feeling kind of optimistic about things.
Yeah.
But I've kind of noticed real estate prices still dropping.
Yeah.
We keep having to drop prices. And so the market's not necessarily behaving the way it did 6 months ago if you're looking at 6-month-old comps. So pay attention to your actives and pendings, because that's going to tell you a lot when you're doing short-term investments like fix and flips.
For sure. And I know anyone who's been in this game long enough knows that these things kind of come in waves. So, interest rates dropping, right? The housing prices behind it, they're trying to catch up, and they're trying to ride the wave of everything, but it doesn't always make 100% correlation. Just look at your data, talk to professionals.
Yep. And have healthy margins. If you're fixing and flipping, you don't do the 80%, don't do the 90%, do 70% or less, please.
Yeah.
If you can do anything out there, if you're fixing and flipping a property and it's going to take you, 3 months to a year, you've got to have that healthy margin, not just to cover all your, buying expenses and financing fees, because that 30%, that like you might think to yourself, well, 30%, that's a lot. You actually have more like 15% when you're buying at a 70% margin.
Yeah.
Because almost 15% is going towards your buying and selling costs and holding costs.
Yep.
So if you're using a hard money loan or something like that, easily half of that is going away in hard money loans, brokers' commissions, title fees, escrow fees, on the buy side, on the sell side. Just know that when you're, again, if you're just thinking gross, your gross 30% margin discounts, it's really like 15.
Right.
So if you're thinking, maybe I can do an 85% deal, you're slim pickings at 7%, and you better be very, very accurate on your ARVs.
Yeah. And that's something I was going to say too. Like when you're looking at ARVs, it does not hurt you to be conservative.
No.
It will hurt you if you're thinking like, oh, this will sell for 500, and there's no evidence to support that.
The only bad thing that's going to happen is you'll just pass on more deals.
Yeah, and that's okay.
And that's totally okay.
Yeah, then you'll find the ones that make sense
out there.
But like, it's very important. Like, I just want to like hammer this home. Like, it is very important to not buy these things emotionally. Whatever you're buying.
Yeah, that's a big thing. Don't use your emotions.
Right, because what happens is, you start analyzing a deal, and you're like, oh, okay, like, well, maybe the market will go up in 7 months. Like, the market could go up in 7 months, so this could be worth $550. So you start running your numbers at $550 when really you should be running them at like $460. That's a big chunk of change and difference, right?
Yeah, I want to bring up two examples of the times where I brought my emotions into buying something. And really fucking paid for it on the back end.
Okay.
I'll give you two examples. First one, I bought a property in Sagal right at the peak of the market, spring of 2022. The reason why I was so interested in purchasing this property was because I missed out on buying it 8 years before that in 2014, when I could have bought it for $79,000. But then I guess the bank didn't properly foreclose on it, and they had to take it off the market. And I was like, oh, dang it, I really wanted that property.
Yeah. It was a mobile home on like how many acres? 5?
5 acres, and it had a little view of this lake pond.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
It was off the freeway, and it was actually, because it was 8 years prior to that, I didn't quite realize either that they kind of changed up the highway.
Yeah.
And you used to have much faster access to this property.
Yeah.
So you had better access to this property when I saw it. When I decided to buy it, afterwards, it had changed. But because I already had my emotions tied to it, I wanted it badly. Just because I'm like, ooh, I can finally buy it again. Yeah. And it was a wholesale deal at $400,000. I ended up actually, losing $210,000 on that property. Wowie. Yep, $210,000 on a flip. There were some other reasons why I lost it. Lost that much. I bought it, and it was a 1976 trailer that I thought was built to the HUD standards. It was built to the HUD standards, but it didn't have that data plate. And it was built 3 months before.
I was gonna say, it was a couple months before that actually went into effect, right?
It was built a couple months before that went into effect in 1976. So thus, the property wasn't able to qualify for financing like I thought it was when I bought it.
You couldn't do FHA on it, right? Or the buyer couldn't do FHA, right?
Couldn't do FHA, couldn't do conventional loans, Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, VA, nothing.
Wow.
So it had to be cash or seller financing or a bank portfolio loan.
And this is such a huge thing. Like you don't realize how big of a deal that is. When you're talking about these houses being built up to HUD standards, and you think that you're buying a house that's built on that, you need to verify.
Yeah, and I thought I verified.
Verify before you buy.
I just didn't know enough about manufactured homes and financing. I really learned my lesson.
Yeah, you did, yeah. $200,000.
Yeah. And then one other example. I remember bringing on a newer agent on my team a few years ago, and he brought me this deal that we were all excited. We were going to partnership. He was going to make some good money on it. And I screwed up on my sheet. I can't remember what I screwed up, but I miscalculated a number where I think the commissions were backwards or something like that.
Yeah.
or something was backwards, but it was off by like over 30 grand.
Yep.
And so at the last minute, we had to bring more cash to the table or back out, and I didn't want to back out.
Yeah.
And I was thinking in my head, I was emotional about it. I was like, dude, I just, kind of promised this guy a deal.
I'm already invested, right?
I'm kind of already invested in this. Yeah, we're probably not going to make as much, but the market's going up. My emotions were like, this house could be worth a lot more. You'll make up for it over time.
Yeah.
It didn't fit that criteria anymore of that 70% deal.
Yeah.
But I went with it anyway, just because my emotions were tied into it. At the end of the day, I think it was 2 years later, lost a disgusting amount.
It's
Eventually, yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Eventually, that partner I wanted to help out, I let him walk from the deal because he didn't have much money anyway, and he moved out of state.
Yeah.
Good friend of mine. I don't blame him for it. But at the same time, I took all the losses.
Yep.
Had another partner on there too that I didn't feel comfortable about the partnership arrangement. And he didn't quite help out like I thought he would. He moved to another state too. I was a 25% owner in this initially.
Yeah.
Became 100% owner of a $400,000 loss.
Yikes.
Yeah. So, ugh.
Yeah,
Ugh.
and there's a lot to be learned from this, obviously. I mean, we're over an hour right now, but I'll keep it brief. Vet your partners. Make sure that you write in your operating agreement that, like, you are responsible for loss based off your percentage ownership in the deal.
Not always.
Not always, but like that's pretty standard. Like I imagine, like, on this deal, if it went completely sour for whatever reason, we're 60-40, I would take 40% of the losses. Like, that's just my integrity speaking.
Yeah.
And that's just something that, like, to protect yourself and them in a contract, I think you should potentially have in it.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, there's a lot more to that story than that one, but
we've talked about
the problem is, the problem is it started with me and my emotions, and I'm the one that made mistakes, and I had to take responsibility for it, and I don't regret that decision.
No, you don't.
I learned a lot, but it's just something to learn from. Like, dude, if you feel like you're getting your emotions involved in a deal, fucking back off.
Yeah,
because it's not going to end well.
Yeah. Make sure, and when you're analyzing, obviously you miscalculated a number, right? Analyze it once, and maybe run it through another spreadsheet just to make sure you hit all your numbers right.
Yeah.
Like, redo your spreadsheets. There's nothing wrong with double analyzing and, like, okay, these numbers match up on both my sheets. Cool.
Yeah. So I feel like we can talk about deals for 16 hours straight, but we got to end.
We got to go somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
Y'all ain't got to go home, but you got to get the hell up out of here.
Get out of here. Get out of here. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, and thank you so much for listening and checking out the Investor Shed podcast. As always, make sure to leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Check out our YouTube pages. It's at the Investor Shed. We also throw them up on Nick Beveridge's YouTube. Nick throws a bunch of other content on his page as well. So give them both a follow.
Nice shout out, bro.
Yeah, no problem
all
at all.
right. Thanks, guys. See you next week. Bye. Or you can just watch an episode at any time.
Yeah, do it right now.
Thank you so much for checking out the Investor Shed podcast. If you enjoyed your time, make sure to leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Follow along on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram at The Investor Shed for shorts and promos about each episode. Do you want to be a guest or know someone who has great real estate investing advice and stories? Reach out to us at theinvestorshed@gmail.com.